Hello, everyone. Earlier today, the UN Security Council held a ministerial briefing on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, and one of the speakers was Dr. Robert Floyd, the Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Dr. Floyd will say a few words, and then we'll take any questions you may have for him.
Today I address the UN Security Council, and I'd first like to thank the Foreign Minister of Japan, Foreign Minister Kamikawa, for the invitation and for the Japanese leadership on this matter. This comes at a critical point in the whole global peace and security context, a critical point for the non-proliferation and disarmament architecture. And it was encouraging to hear strong statements of support from so many of the Security Council members. I previously addressed the Security Council nearly 2.5 years ago, and so I did emphasize some of the things that have changed since last time. Last time there was 185 state signatories, now 187 out of a possible 196. This is near universal support. Last time, 170 ratifications of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT. Now, 178. Now remember, that's in the context of a rather high-profile de-ratification last year, but -1 is in the context of +9. The flow of the states is clear. Since last time, we've seen 2 states complete all of their monitoring stations in their country. We have 337 facilities around the world, now more than 90% established. But Argentina and the Russian Federation both completed all of the stations that they're responsible for in their territory in the last 2.5 years. We've been focusing on making sure that the smallest of states are able to access the CTBT data for their own purposes, for their training, and also for natural disaster management. The final thing that I would emphasize that has changed since last time, public awareness is at a higher level, in part due to the Oppenheimer movie, but anxiety is probably at a much higher level too. Anxiety of states that they're concerned that some states may use a nuclear weapon, that there's an accumulation of high enriched uranium for purposes that are a little hard to understand, that there is increased activity at some of the former test sites around the world. So what hasn't changed since I spoke to the Security Council in 2021? What hasn't changed is that the CTBT continues to support the global norm against testing. Countries have committed to a moratorium on testing, and our data and monitoring system enables every country to know that the states are actually maintaining that with integrity. That has not changed. The success of the treaty has not changed. There's been less than a dozen nuclear tests since the treaty was open for signature in 1996. Before that, 2,000 tests. Fortunately, no tests since I last addressed the Security Council. What has not changed is a call for a permanent ban and a legally binding ban on nuclear testing. That chorus from states is loud, clear, and ever louder. So to be clear, I'm here today to have the opportunity to brief the Security Council and everyone watching here on a number of aspects. The geopolitical landscape is unstable, leads to anxiety, and there are many concerns, that is for sure. The non-proliferation and disarmament architecture must be protected and strengthened in this current context. The CTBT has already been a great success in seeing almost the end to nuclear testing in the 27 years that the treaty has been open for signature. And we also face an opportunity now to do something for the next generation. that there could be hope of a world without nuclear tests and a world without nuclear weapons. That we could leave this world in a better place by finishing the job before us and seeing this treaty enter into force and all of its verification mechanisms becoming available. That all could sleep better at night. It is possible that we can still move to that, and we at the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organisation are absolutely resolute in our commitment towards that end. Be very happy to take your questions. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Yvonne Mariotti, News. We heard the Secretary General today talk about it being at the highest point in decades with regard to geopolitical tensions and the threat of nuclear conflict, accidental or otherwise. Can you give us your thoughts on his views? And also, can you do a comparison with what we're facing today with the height of the Cold War and the threat of nuclear conflict at that time?
The Secretary General made a very powerful statement in the Security Council and highlighted the concerns in the current geopolitical circumstance. There is no way that I would ever diminish his sober assessment. Many of us that have worked in this space thought that we would never be in a context where there was a question about use of nuclear weapons, weapons that were meant to be for deterrence only. And yet, that is where we are now. That is a reason that I would say, yes, it is a concerning circumstance. How that compares to the height or the end of the Cold War is a bit harder to make a reference point, but the important point is this is a significant point in time now that there is concern about the possibility that we could face use of nuclear weapons. That is not good for anyone.
Just a bit of a reality check. What would you actually expect the Security Council to do in limiting the use of nuclear weapons? You, in a room where you have China, which kind of shields North Korea in their nuclear testing, and so does Russia as an enabler. What, in reality, can you expect? I mean, you use the word hope. Hope is not really much there. There's not much substance.
Today was a briefing of the Security Council. It was not about a resolution. It was not about there being a specific decision. It was a critical opportunity to be able to brief all of the members of the Security Council, permanent and non-permanent members, about the state of non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, and in my responsibility specifically about the CTBT. It was good to see that they could see the success and that it's not all doom and gloom. But it wasn't set for a decision to be taken at the Security Council, but more for them to think about the context and where leadership and statesmanship could play as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sinan. I'm with the Ruda Media Network. As you know, 36 years ago, Saddam Hussein regime used chemical weapons against Kurds, and he killed more than 5,000 Kurd civilians. And we didn't hear anything this morning at the Security Council. Nobody talked about Halabja. I wonder if you have any comment on that, or what's your response?
Nobody spoke about Habakshah. Somebody did, actually. But in my comments, the first picture that I painted was actually visiting Hiroshima for the anniversary celebrations, the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima last year. And I said that we can debate issues about non-proliferation and disarmament, but when you visit Hiroshima or Nagasaki, you are confronted with the realities of the devastation of the use of a nuclear weapon. And that, I think, is very good for more people to do, and to have the opportunity to hear from the Habakshah, the survivors, that are less and less of them still, alive today, but to hear from the survivors their stories is very powerful. and a very important reminder to all of us that labour towards a world without nuclear weapons. We should honour, them in our work.
Hi, I'm Catherine Huggins with my Nietzsche newspapers. You spoke about the possibility of seeing a nuclear weapons-free world in my lifetime, in future generations' lifetimes. What do you think is the pathway to achieving this when you have broad consensus around the issue, but you have other states like the DPRK, like Iran, violating this because one state is enough to not have a nuclear-free world?
My responsibility is for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and so we are looking at that step where a state would need to test a device if they were to establish a nuclear weapon capability. That is why this ban is so important, is it stops the spread of nuclear weapons to new states. It also limits the ability for states to develop different classes of weapons. It also is absolutely critical for us to get to a world without nuclear weapons. That unless you have confidence that you know if any other state is testing, it is very hard to have the confidence to then get rid of nuclear weapons. So it is a critical element in a world without nuclear weapons. The vast majority of states, in fact all states on a good day, agree with the object and purpose of the CTBT. Even Kim Jong-un has declared a suspension in his testing activities back in 2018. And North Korea has not tested since 2017. Long may that continue, but they have not committed to a moratorium like all other nuclear possessor states have done. So this again shows there is a commitment amongst even those that have nuclear weapons to a moratorium on testing. We want to keep building on that and to find the pathway in geostrategic circumstances to move towards a legally binding ban on testing, and then ultimately that as a step towards a world without nuclear weapons. Not an easy path, implied in your question, but not a path which is impossible. It's worth it. Okay. Thank you all very much.